People are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. The hiring process can be slow and overwhelming. Simplify hiring with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform. With over 350 million global monthly visitors according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. That's Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Terms and conditions apply.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your own online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to the other leading commerce platforms. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. Shopify.com/promo.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. There's no point me asking how you are. I'm looking out the window. The weather is exactly the same as it was the last time we spoke because it was only a minute ago. But here we are, back again. Have you still got a tea towel over your head, Kieran? I've been wondering why you've been... I know you haven't got a hangover or indeed a cold. So why have you got a tea towel over your head?
I've got a tea towel over my head because I'm recording it in an office in Liverpool, which has got 3 walls and 1 very big window, and it's to try to reduce the amount of echo, because it probably sounds as if I'm recording in a cave, which is perhaps preferable to 8 hours in Stuttgart Airport, I can assure you.
I'm sure it is. It's interview day, as I say, Kieran, and again, as I say every week, I really wish, much as I enjoyed the company, I really wish we didn't have to do this interview. And it's an interview with Andrew Moffat, who's co-host of, I think, a brilliant podcast, Inverness Caledonian Thistle club podcast, the Wyness Shuffle. Well, it's not their club podcast, it's a fans podcast. But it's a club, Kieran, we've spoken about a lot over the summer, and we wanted to get to the bottom of what was happening and what was going to happen. So we had this very interesting and very passionate talk with Andrew. Can we start, as ever, by asking just a little bit about yourself and about your fantastic podcast?
Oh, thank you for calling it a fantastic podcast. I'm originally from Inverness. I've supported the club since its inception in 1994. We've been through thick and thin during that time, mostly thick. It was all good for about 21 years. Most recently, it's been very, very thin. Myself and a handful of now middle-aged men with too much time on our hands started the podcast a few years ago. I think that's usually how podcasts start. About 6 years ago, we'd been relegated to the Championship at that time after being in the Premier League for about 12 years, and we thought we'd reached a new low going to the Championship, but little did we know how low we could go, which is, as of this new season, is League One in Scottish football. That's where we are, which is affectionately called by a lot of Scottish football fans the Seaside Leagues.
Okay. Yeah, you'd have noticed 2 middle-aged men on the pod with you nodding away when you said that's how most pods start. You mentioned 1994, Andrew. Before we begin to unpack what has been a long and difficult summer, perhaps you could give us a brief history of a club that some of our listeners may only know from one brilliant tabloid headline.
Yeah, well, we are mostly known for that, but that's only sort of one great achievement in our history. I mean, we were in the Premier League in Europe just 9 years ago. 2 years ago, we were 90 minutes from returning to the Premier League. We were in the Scottish Cup final. A year ago, we won the Scottish Cup in 2015. We're a relatively young football club. We were formed in 1994 through the amalgamation of two Highland League clubs. And during those first, as I say, 21 years, we were on an upward trajectory throughout the Scottish leagues that culminated in that 12 years in the Premier League from 2004 to 2017. We finished third, actually, in the league in the same year we won the Scottish Cup. Then we were then relegated from the Premier in 2017. We spent 7 years in the second tier of the Championship. The aim for each of those 7 years was to get out of the Championship, and we succeeded. In the last season, unfortunately, we went down instead of up.
Yeah. And perhaps you could, and I'm sure you're fed up with saying this, perhaps you could remind some of our younger listeners what that headline was.
Supercalligobalistic Celtic are atrocious.
Yeah. After you'd beat them in a cup game, was it?
After we beat them 3-1 at Parkhead in the cup, in 2000.
Okay. This is going to be painful, Andrew, but let's talk about the past few months, because you have cropped up on the pod on a depressingly regular basis. First of all, that relegation to League One and what that means financially to the club. And then something that we've talked about a lot, that proposed move of the training ground 136 miles south, and why it collapsed. And I'm aware that that's one of the longest questions I've ever asked. But if you could do the relegation finances first, and then I'm really interested in the second one, that proposed move to Kelty.
So on the 18th, I think it was the 18th of May now, we were relegated to League One. It was following a fairly pathetic 5-3 aggregate loss in the playoffs to Hamilton. That was after finishing second bottom in the league, and we were gutted about that. We wonder what the implications of that would be. We thought, listen, this could end up being part-time football here. Could spell the end for the football club, given the level of debts that they have, which are into the millions. So we thought that was bad. And then a few days later, the chairman released a statement to say, we're remaining full-time. So it's like, okay, great, we've got a great opportunity to get back up straight away. Then a few days later, they released another statement which says they are delighted to announce, and the word was an innovative agreement with League One side Kelty Hearts, who play in Fife, which will see the club move our training base to Fife, which is essentially mean everybody involved in the playing side of the football club would be based in Fife for the entirety of the week and come back to Inverness every second Saturday to play a home game, which is completely unacceptable for almost the entirety of the support. They said that this was due to issues they got in attracting players to the Highlands and his sort of associated accommodation costs. And this was obviously despite the people who have been in charge of the football club and the previous managers and the previous boards attaining a good level of success with these exact issues I've intonated earlier. We have achieved success. In fact, we're probably the most successful provincial club in Scotland over the last 20 years. And these sort of accommodation issues and attracting players issues, yes, they were always issues, but they were always things we could get over by being able to attract the right type of player. We subsequently discovered that this idea was the brainchild of our not overly popular CEO. The Supporters Trust then released a statement outlining a series of questionable decisions at the club and calling for a change in leadership. That's not going to change. That's not going to change anything really, because we have quite a resolute individuals in charge of the football club that don't really listen to what the fans say. But then the trust, fair play to them, and they've been leading on this, our Supporters Trust, they called an open meeting at which a few hundred people attended. Hands went up in the room. People will not renew season tickets, etc., etc. if the Kelty move goes through. Again, will people listen to that? Straw poll? Maybe not. So then they initiated an online survey asking people to say how much money would you not put into the football club if the Kelty move goes ahead, and within a few days, a conservative estimate was £200,000 they're not going into the football club through season ticket sales and through shirt and merchandise sales, which wouldn't have gone through. And the proposed move to Kelty, well, it was proposed initially, I think I talked to the chairman on our podcast, and he said that would have saved £300,000. So you're saving £300,000 potentially, but you're losing £200,000 in income from your fans. So, the chairman, he comes on our podcast, we outline that to him. The next day, he goes into work and he resigns And we know that from the Company's House, certainly Company's House report that he resigned the next day. That resignation isn't made public by the club until about 2 weeks later, at which point the club then say that, I'll read this, they were in discussions with potential new investors into the club, hopeful of finding a new investor. We've approached a suitably qualified insolvency practitioner, which is alarm bells for all of us, to advise how we should go forward. And for clarity, we're not going to Fife. 137 words, and that was it.
It wasn't the word innovative that annoyed me in that press release. It's the word delighted. Because that's such a tin ear, isn't it? I mean, you don't, if you're having to make decisions like that, and everybody knows that you've got financial problems, then the fans might take it on board. But when you're saying this is a great idea, you're going to love this. I suppose, can you give us some idea though, Andrew? Because I love Scotland and I spend some time there every year. But even I'm not entirely sure of how big a country. There's no doubt, is there, that for the Highland clubs, there are issues around travel expenses because most of the clubs are based on that lower belt, aren't they, towards the border? So it's not a surprise, perhaps, that the ownership are saying this is one way around what's always an expensive thing.
Well, as I outlined earlier, the club has always had this issue, and the point is to actually try and go for the players that do want to come to the football club. The club should be an attractive proposition for a footballer. There's many players that have played for us that have gone on to have fantastic careers in the Scottish Premier League and further afield in England. And we are a stepping stone. We know where we are as a football club. The point is being able to try and find the right players that want to play for the football club. It's also a fantastic place to live, and the standard of living is very good. A lot of young players come up from the Central Belt and they find they can actually switch themselves off from their family life and their backgrounds and whatnot, and they can really concentrate just on football because it is obviously 3.5 hours up the road from Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Well, also, as well as I think we'll discuss a little bit later on, there's a great pool of footballing talent in the Highlands anyway.
Yeah, well, we've got a great youth system. That's what we'll be relying upon this season. Unfortunately, last season, the options for the young players to play in the first team were very limited due to the current manager's choice of playing staff, shall we say. This season doesn't really have that option because we don't have any players. So,
well, we come on to that.
In loan last season, he's now got to rely upon.
Before we talk about the details of your specific financial problems at the moment, which are worrying, I understand from some of the research that I tried to do that the club has tried other plans to raise money which have fallen through. There's a park and ride project and there was a battery factory. Apparently the club was supposed to be getting planning permission to build, which my response was exactly yours, that kind of incredulous laughter. But it's clear that they have explored other options to make money for the club, haven't they?
I think that they've been largely derided for these diversifications of income projects. But I think there's been the right ideas behind them in that a Scottish football club cannot survive on its own income from match tickets and from sales, or for getting a big away support every now and again. There does need to be a diversification, but to put absolutely everything on that diversification, to absolutely back that, to put all your chickens, all your eggs in that basket, and nothing else, that was folly. So they put everything into the Battery Farm, which is essentially, for a pot of history, it's a piece of land in Inverness. People that were running the football club at the time owned the land, or certainly got the land from a partner, and they put in an application for the Battery Farm, which was passed by the council, and then it went to a review, and then it was turned down, and there was all sorts of nefarious shenanigans going on there that I'm not fully across, and then that's now currently with, I think, the Scottish Government's Planning Review Committee, or whatever they might be called, and I think it'll probably eventually be turned down. And then there's other things like a concert company which made losses as well, which cost the directors money, which could have gone into the football club because it wasn't run well. There was a park and ride which fell through recently, and then there was a lot of lost commercial opportunities over the past few years. We know of at least one business who have a hoarding at the ground. That hoarding's been there for a number of seasons. That hoarding's still there, though you'll see it when football matches are on the TV, or you'll see it in highlights, you'll see it on streaming, and they haven't paid any money for that hoarding in 2 seasons because no one's been in touch with them. That's a very basic commercial opportunity there, and that's the sort of basic things that the club haven't been doing.
Can we just? You mentioned that the chairman, Ross Morrison, resigned over the training grounds move, or it seemed that was the timing of it. Has he been replaced? Is there a new chairman now, or is the CEO running the club?
The CEO is running the football club. There is not a new chairman. There is only, I think, 3 remaining chairmen, one of whom Kieran will probably know well from his dealings at Watford some years ago, Panos Thomas. And there's another, as I say, there's another 2 directors as well. The statements that have been coming out recently have been attributed to Panos. He's only been at the club since not long, since last season anyway. And the club is absolutely running on empty right now in terms of finances, in terms of staff, in terms of board members, in terms of players, and in terms of fans. It's absolutely running on empty until this investment comes in, and it needs to come in very soon.
Kieran, I didn't like the face you pulled when Andrew mentioned the ex-Watford director. But what can you tell us about the Inverness Caledonian Thistle's latest accounts and what that tells us?
Well, there were 2 red flags for me. The first of which, here I'm being a nerd, the club applied for Section 442 of the Companies Act 2006, I think it is, which allows the club to change its financial year by 1 day, but delay publishing the accounts for 3 months. I've always taken the view, if you've got nothing to hide, hide nothing. So they were the last club to produce their accounts as a result of that, which I thought was disappointing. The accounts themselves weren't particularly detailed, but they lost £500,000 in 2023, about 850 grand in 2022, about 250 grand in the COVID season, and so on. So it's a club which has been losing money on a regular basis. So they are reliant upon the support of people who are willing to put their hands in their pockets. I'm not denying that, but I think, as Andrew has said, communication could be better. I think there should be greater trust. Because if you start to develop relationships of trust, then you can get people to see the benefits of proposed decisions. And also, if those decisions are looking poor, then people like Andrew, Supporters Trust and so on, their role can be that of a critical friend. And we all need a mate at some time to pull you to one side and say, look, what you do is what you do. This is not going to work. And those are your true friends. And in my view, the football fans are the true friends of the football club, because we might be guilty of short-termism at some point, but just ignore those idiots. I think the true fans are the ones who see from a progression and sustainability point of view that you've got to make the right decisions. And perhaps the club's had a bit of a tin ear when those opportunities have provided themselves over the past few years.
Andrew, it seems to be conflicting news this week. I'm interested to hear Kieran talk about those figures. I was interested to hear you mention millions of pounds worth of debt this week, because looking at some Scottish newspapers this week, they talked about £300,000 to £500,000 worth of debt, which could cause you to go into administration if not paid. But also the same newspapers reporting that you've had, they're guessing the figure, but an offer of $2 million from £2 million rather from a US consortium. So you're shaking your head there. So clearly you don't think that 300 to 500,000 figure is realistic.
I think it's probably realistic that they need to raise, because I think this was an insider that commented to the newspapers. It needs to raise 300,000 to pay creditors in the coming weeks, or it could go under. I think that's pretty factual. Right. But the loss, I think it's £588,053 loss. I think that's a fairly conservative loss. I think this is just my opinion. I think there's greater losses which have been subsumed by the debts to creditors in the previous seasons to sort of make the accounts look slightly better, probably to interested parties. I know there were a number of investor packs sent out to interested parties. I know that some of them, I've been told, some of them immediately ruled themselves out once they saw the extent of the creditors list. The creditors, well, for instance, the chairman is owed at least £1.5 million, if not two.
The chairman is?
The chairman is, yeah.
The one that resigned?
This is the one I probably want to ask you guys this question. So the chairman he said he put in £1.5 to £3 million over his 6 years at the football club, but yet he's claiming back £2 million or £3 million from the football club based on the debts that he's racked up with the bank. Could anybody not do that? Could I not just go and get a loan and then take over a football club and then it all goes tits up and I go, I'll have my money back now, please? I don't know how that works.
Kieran? It's very sweet that Andrew said you guys when quite clearly he meant Kieran, but it's a great question, and fans of clubs all over England and Scotland and probably the rest of the world have been asking that in the last couple of years.
The answer is, of course, it depends. And the reason why I'd say that is, does the football club have the facilities to make that repayment? If an individual has taken out a loan privately and has effectively transferred that loan to the football club, then the club, in theory, has to repay that at some point in time. I mean, Andrew's rightly been saying that there have been conversions of loans to shares, which is another way of saying we don't want the money back. And we've seen that with quite a few clubs. It does certainly improve the appearance of the balance sheet, and it means that anybody inheriting the club pays money for the shares and is not under an obligation to repay those loans. But yeah, you can saddle the club with debt and take all of the rewards and let the club pay all of the costs in respect of those debts. I mean, the classic example, I don't know, this is south of the border, is that of Manchester United. The Glazers saddled the club with £700 million worth of debt, and Manchester United's paid out over £900 million in interest, whilst the value of the club has gone up, and all of that increase in value of the club has gone to the owners. So we often refer to this as a leveraged buyout or a quasi-leveraged buyout, I think, in certain circumstances. It can be very financially beneficial for people who are viewing football clubs purely through an investment lens. I'm not necessarily saying this is the case here. I think the Glazers and some of the other English investors, especially coming from the States, have purely been looking at financial benefits to them. But always, when there are loans associated with football clubs, you've got to keep a close eye on things, and that goes for even clubs which are considered to be run well.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost, built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your site will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.
Welcome to another round of Drawing Board or Miro Board. Today we discuss technical diagramming with systems architect Maya. Let's go. First question. You've spent 10 hours slogging over a sequence diagram that should have taken 5. Drawing board or Miro board?
Drawing board. And if I'm being honest, Miro would probably cut that time down by half. You know, with its AI tools and ready-to-go templates.
Next, your diagrams become so bulky, it's more complex than the solar system. But all it takes is a few clicks and...
It's Miro. I've used those technical shape packs way too many times.
Now, the final question. Everyone's brought in, but you have to make all these tasks all the way over in Jira. But wait, it's done. Is it...
Miro, easy with its two-way Jira sync. Easy to plot dependencies. Everyone always knows what's up.
And she's done it.
For a limited time, visit Miro.com/diagram now and get a free business plan trial to unlock even more features like advanced shapes, dependency mapping, and two-way Jira syncing. Get started today at Miro.com/diagram now.
So, Kieran, just clarify this for me before I ask Andrew what he knows about this potential American takeover. If the figure that's being talked about in the press of £2 million to buy the club is correct, A, does that seem a fair price for you? And B, does that not mean then that if the chairman wants his money back, then that figure's going to go up to £5 million because they're going to have to spend £3 million on paying his loan back?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I mean, we're normally valuing clubs at somewhere in the region of 1.5 to 2 times their revenue at present. So I've just seen a deal where I think it was 1.8 times revenue, and that was for a club that was in a pretty strong position. But you've got to look at what you're inheriting. It's the same when you buy a house. I always say, use the house analogy. If you're buying a house for 200 grand, but you've got to go and put in new kitchens, new windows, and so on, it's costing you more than 200 grand. If I buy a house and I pay you 200 grand and I inherit your mortgage as well, then it's costing me more than 200 grand. So the small print is critical. If it's £2 million, which I don't think is an unfair price, but it's not necessarily cheap either, and you've got to go and take on the obligations in respect of significant borrowings running into millions, then to me that's looking inherently expensive, because there's not a lot of money in the TV deals in Scotland unless you are in the Premiership, and even so, the value of the deals is modest. In the Premiership you get the benefit of a few more big paydays in terms of away fans turning up. So what we tend to see in for the vast majority of clubs in Scottish football, that they tend to run a fairly tight ship. We're not looking at that here.
Andrew, a couple of the Scottish tabloids in particular seem to be very bullish about this American bid. Do you have any insight at all into whether it's credible, whether it actually exists?
I don't. There's rumours. There's been rumours all summer. We're led to believe that there's 3 interested parties, I believe. One's an American group, this American group. One is a Chinese group, I've heard. And another is possibly an Australian/English sports group. So, yeah, the papers have said that the Americans are supposed to have an exclusivity agreement with the club. And I think they've got till 25th of July to confirm their intentions. I would suggest that they maybe have said 25th of July so they could possibly announce something to the fans, because the start of our league season happens the week after, and we are not selling season tickets, and people are not going into the ground unless the people that currently run the football club are gone. So I think that's probably what that date's around. The £2 million I think is probably quite accurate. Wraith Rovers, who are in a much better position than us, they went for £3 million last season. And they were pretty solvent, and we're not. So 2 million is probably accurate, but I think there's that £2 million. I think I don't even think that would get 50% of voting power in terms of shareholders, though. I think shareholders would have to accept a devaluation in their holdings, which I think is pretty much what Motherwell fans have just voted against in terms of their recent American investment this week. So there's obviously a lot of debate to be going on, a lot of conversation with shareholders, and there's probably non-disclosure agreements that have been signed as well, so it's probably difficult about what can come out and what we'll actually know until it actually gets done, probably. But I mean, it's positive. We're willing. I'm willing to take a MAGA supporting, gun wielding Republican maniac over what we have right now. Anyone will do. Any American will do.
That might come back to haunt you. That,
do you know it?
Any American will do. I'm almost reluctant to ask this next question, Andrew, because I asked it last week to our Morecambe fan, and I got laughed out of court. But has the idea of fan ownership of the club ever been discussed?
I mean, we're in the really early stages of that. From talking to the Supporters Trust, the Supporters Trust have been an ongoing group for a number of years, but they've only really sort of become properly organised this last season, and as the club's been going through sort of a tumultuous time, they've done a really good job of pulling the fans together in one direction under one banner this summer, and I think going forward down the line, a lot of fans would like to see that happen. We don't have a huge fan base, so I don't think we could ever be only fan owned, even to the extent that the likes of St Mirren or someone is. Morton are currently wholly fan owned, and they find it very difficult, but they have to supplement Greenock Morton. They have to supplement what the fan groups put in with regular donations from benefactors with links to Inverclyde, and I think some of them are from America actually. So yeah, fan ownership would be great. At the moment, I think we'd be happy with just having the fans more engaged in the football club, just having an ownership, having a board that will listen to the fans, and just having us more engaged in the decision-making process. And I think a word you guys always talk about in this pod is transparent. We have been the opposite. The football club has been the opposite of transparent for years now. And if we could get that transparency back and build that trust, that's the minimum of what we're looking for at the moment, to be honest, in terms of new owners coming in.
You have an illustrious manager, legendary centre-forward and self-styled hard man, Duncan Ferguson. And you mentioned that there's been no option but to downsize the squad to try and recruit young local talent. How has the manager been through this crisis? Has he been front and centre with the fans? Has he kept a low profile?
He's kept the lowest of profiles. Yeah. End of the season, he didn't make a peep after the last game of the season. I have to choose my words carefully with this one, because although the people around the football club vex most people, I get more vexed by this individual. He wasn't seen over the entirety of the summer. We had a lot of obviously extremely bad things happening at the football club. We had a lot of servants that had been there for a long period of time. We had a goalkeeping coach who doubled up as our under-18s coach, who brought through all our players, half the players that are going to make the first team squad. He was let go. Nobody got in touch with him. That was the same with our long-serving goalkeeper, who has our record shutouts appearance. He came on our podcast to come and get me plea, essentially. Nobody got in touch with him. The assistant manager was in touch with him at the end of the season, saying the manager's going to get in touch with you. He wants you to be there next season. Manager never got in touch with him. Manager didn't get in touch with anybody. We know this because we talk to players. We know players. We know certain individuals in the squad, senior players. And then there was a player called Aaron Doran, who has been with the football club for 14 years. He joined us as a 19-year-old from Blackburn. He's a club hero. He's a legend. He won the Scottish Cup with us. He's gone through the leagues with us in terms of First Division, Premier League. He's had a number of injuries. He came back last season. He got an injury towards the end of the season. He was due an operation. The club delayed that operation. The club delayed that operation again. And then Aaron Doran, 14 years with the football club, received his P45 when he was waiting for an operation that a former teammate had to fund himself through a crowdfunder, at which thousands of players and managers of people across Scottish football donated money to. And Duncan Ferguson wasn't in touch with him. Duncan Ferguson hasn't been in touch with anybody till the season started this season, and now he's saying, we need to support these young players and build up these young players. But Duncan Ferguson never picked any of the young players last season. He sent them out on loan, and he brought in a bunch of jobbers from England, and we still got relegated. My opinions on Duncan Ferguson are stronger than what I just said, and some people support him. I can't.
Kieran, it's a small town, Andrew, so thank you for your bravery in saying those words when you could walk past him in the high street any day. This is what I don't understand about transparency, Kieran. When you have got a club in a smaller community with a passionate fan base, the fans are going to find stuff out anyway. So why not tell them in the first place? I mean, I find, of course, you support Liverpool, you support Leeds or whatever. Fans aren't privy to local information, but in somewhere like Inverness, the fans know the players, they know the coaches, they know the people that work at the club. They're going to find things out anyway, so why not just tell them? Even if it's bad news. Even if you can just prepare them for it. It just, week after week, we hear fans like Andrew talk about the fact we try and talk to the club, we reach out, they don't reach back. It's just infuriating.
I can understand that. If you talk to anybody in PR, anybody in any form of advisory capacity, they always say, be upfront, be honest, and if you've screwed up, apologise straight away. The club appear to be taking the same view as I've done in the past when I've got home at 4 o'clock in the morning and I've said to the Baroness, I've been out with my friends, we went for a curry after, they had a few drinks, of course I don't drink, And I've forgotten to say that I've been to the casino and lost 500 quid. And eventually, she goes, "Why is there no money in the bank account?" And it comes out, and you're not doing yourself any favours. So I think it's very much a false economy when clubs take the view that there's a 1% chance that nobody's going to find this out. So let's go for that 1%, because it does mean that they're coming across as clandestine and opaque. Andrew has spoken about having a trust relationship, and I think that is, for a community club, for a club which resonates and identifies with the town or city that bears its name. The people that run the club can be ridiculously short-sighted and also slightly paranoid in terms of their dealings. The fans want exactly the same. That they want the club to be successful. They want people to be able to be proud to wear the shirt, and they want to be able to go and buy the shirt. And you've got people who, due to their paranoia and due to the lack of trust that they have, don't do the sensible things early, and that's very short-sighted.
I've just got a couple more questions for you, Andrew. Firstly, we've talked a lot on the pod about how, in general, Scottish clubs are relatively financially well run, especially compared to the basket case south of the border for most clubs. Does that make your situation even more frustrating, that you seem to be surrounded by clubs that on a weekly basis are living within their means?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I say, there's successful models all across Scotland now. I think times have changed from just having to have a sugar daddy. St Mirren are doing so well, obviously, in the Premier League. Motherwell's Well Society, they've got a controlling, I think, shareholding at Motherwell. Falkirk Supporters Group, they're in with the bricks. Morton, who are probably, maybe they're the most comparable. Their fan organisation produces £11,000 a month or something like that, I think. They've put in over 750 grand over 5 years or something like that. Wraith Rovers, obviously Morton are fan-owned. Wraith Rovers have a different approach. They have a group of local businessmen. I think their fan group wanted to take control, but the local businessmen group were the successful bidders last season. And their numbers have gone up astronomically in terms of their increase in income and their hospitality, their sponsorship and advertising. I mean, hospitality, sponsorship and advertising, that's your meat and potatoes, and that's something that the football club Inverness haven't been doing over the last few seasons. And in doing that, I think in Wraith, it was reported that Ian Murray got about 60 grand more on his playing budget compared to the season before last. So there's ways of doing it. And it is very frustrating because we do have a fan base there. We were in the Premier League for a long period of time. We're only going to get about 2,000. We're only averaging about 2,000 fans now. We should be at 3.5 to 4. We should be going 3.5 to 4. Falkirk went to about 4,000 plus in this league. No reason why we can't do that as well if we can come out of this and be a stronger football club, which is infinitely possible.
I mean, that hospitality thing seems to be missing a trick there, because you're in one of the most beautiful parts of the world. You should be offering all sorts of weekend packages to people coming up to Scotland to catch a game while they're up there, surely. Well,
if we're getting the American or the Chinese owners, then hopefully we can get the busloads up from Edinburgh, Edinburgh and Glasgow en masse. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. See the tattoo and then come up and see Inverness play. We've got our annual discussion with Neil Doncaster coming up very shortly soon, the head honcho of Scottish football. Do you have a question for Neil or a message for him?
Oh, a question for Neil Doncaster.
Yeah. That we could ask him.
Yeah, I had a Neil Doncaster joke, actually. I'll leave it. Yeah, a question for Neil Doncaster. What would I ask him?
Well, let me ask you if this is a valid question then, because we've spoken to our fans at Morecambe last week, and we've spoken to Trevor Birch, who runs the English Football League, about what they are doing for individual clubs in trouble. Do you think the Scottish football management as a whole does enough for individual clubs that are in trouble like you are?
I don't know that the SPFL do anything. I know the SPFL is quite a small organisation. I think it's Neil Doncaster and a handful of people sitting in an office. It's not a big organisation. It's not a massive amount of infrastructure there. I don't think they necessarily do anything. I think they probably set out the leagues. They decide what the structure is, and they let you get on with it. I don't think there's a huge amount of support there. What I would say is that in Scotland, we play each other. If there's one thing I could say to them, in Scotland, we play each other 4 times a season, and it's getting boring. You know, it's getting boring. 4 times a season. It's been a number of years, probably best part 20 years, without a restructure. We've had a couple of teams added to the league. It'd be good for the Premier League to go up a couple of teams. It'd be good for the Championship to go up a couple of teams, and it would be good for the pyramid to be looked at. But from where we've just been in terms of the Championship, the playoff system being completely skewed in favour of the Scottish Premier team as opposed to the team that's coming up from the Championship is an absolute aberration. We were in that 2 seasons ago. We had to play 4 games before we got to play St Johnstone. Drew with St Johnstone in the first game, and they absolutely annihilated us at McDermott Park in the second, because the guys, a very small squad in the Championship, had just played 5 football matches, and then you're asking them to play against the Premier League team. It's only having to play 2 football matches. That's completely skewed. And then when you go into the playoffs for League One going into the Championship, it's a complete opposite. The second bottom team in the Scottish Championship goes straight into play the third place team in League One. So it's not a level playing field there. So there's a lot of other questions you could ask him as well, but that's probably the most pertinent.
Well, you've got our email address, and it's been. I wish I could talk to people like you in different circumstances, Andrew. I really wish in a different world each week we could just get somebody on from a football club and talk about football in general and life and love and the universe, rather than only meeting people like you in difficult circumstances. And this is why I always hate having to ask this last question, but I feel I have to ask it. What do you think the future holds? Are you genuinely worried that the club could go into administration or worse, or is there 3 months' time you're a big fish in the League One pond with your fancy American owners, and you're going straight back up to the Championship?
I think we could still go into administration. I mean, that line in the press at the weekend was pretty clean on that. So if something doesn't happen pretty soon, I think it's still entirely possible. When the only player that a club has signed over the summer is the manager's son, you got some warning bells ringing there. So yeah, we are worried. Fans are still not buying season tickets. They're still not buying shirts. They will not come back, I think, until we have somebody new in the boardroom. And I think this is obviously all transpired going back to the start of our conversation with the Kelty debacle. The Kelty debacle was the straw that broke the camel's back and sort of invigorated the support to get together. And I think when we won that battle, we knew we were probably going to be in for harder times, and we're in the middle of those harder times right now. But if the investment can come in as soon as possible, if we can get a fresh start, whoever runs the club can re-engage with the support. If you can get rid of the manager, get rid of the manager, please, and then you can improve all aspects of the football club. That's my opinion. Then like Falkirk and Wraith, we can be sustainable and we can be transparent, and then we can hopefully come back stronger than ever. And we can go back to being the pride of the Highlands rather than where we are right now, which is at the lowest point we have been in more than 2 decades.
Well, hopefully we can talk to you again later in the year, and we'll just have a 3-minute interview, and we'll just go, I'll say, how are you, Andrew? And you go, great, it's all sorted now, we're fine. Which would be the sort of interview I'd love to have. Andrew, we wish you all the best. I always say this, and I never know exactly what we can do, but if there is anything we can do, then let us know, and we will try and do it for you, even if it's just some publicity about new initiatives or whatever you have. But I'm running out of ways of saying this, but we just wish you the best, and hopefully things get sorted out for you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, if you can do anything, just let your rich friends know about the football club. We're still available.
Yeah, I think that's addressed to you, Kieran. It's clearly, if it's addressed to me, Andrew's being ironic.
There must be some rich comedians. Come on.
Seriously, Andrew, you know what you said about the worst American. You don't want most of the comedians who work in this country anywhere near. Can you imagine Jimmy Carr buying Inverness Caledonian Thistle?
We've had comedians running the football club for a long time, so it wouldn't make a difference.
going up to Edinburgh in a couple of weeks, Kieran, for a few days, and Andrew has very kindly invited me for a pint and a football chat. I'm not sure I'm going to take him up on that in case Duncan Ferguson looms out from behind a pillar and says, "Is that you?" That's a terrible accent, I know, but he's a braver man than I am when it comes to Duncan Ferguson. I mean, there are so many things to unpack from that, Kieran. I thought what was very interesting was, we are talking to Neil Doncaster soon, who's head of the Scottish football, and I think it's very interesting that Andrew points out that for various reasons the SPFL have a slightly more hands-off approach, shall we say, to clubs and new club ownership.
Yes, I think that is a fair observation. Through Companies House, I think it's only 14 people employed by the SPFL, so it's a very lean machine, and therefore the majority of the time is spent with regards to competition compliance issues, monitoring relationships with HMRC, negotiating with sponsors and commercial partners and so on. And they feel, I've met Neil for a good few curries now, and he says we prefer a hands-off approach. He's a believer in small governance, unless it's really necessary, and on an individual club basis. You can privately, and this is not a conversation I've had with him, you can privately think that Cali Thistle already need to get their act together as far as the board are concerned, but publicly you can't be seen to be saying anything, because ultimately the SPFL is a members' organisation, and one of the shareholders is Inverness Caledonian Thistle, so you can't be seen to be sort of being public criticising one of your own members.
And also interesting to hear, Kieran, from Andrew, that this is a situation where so many fans are absolutely voting with their wallet. They're saying, no, we're not going to buy season tickets, we're not going to buy club shirts, we're not going to buy anything else, because we're not happy with the way the club's being run. And until that's resolved, that's going to be the future. But that's quite a bold decision in the way that Blackpool fans found it, because it does stop money going into the club, because your instinct is to go, well, I'm a fan, I'll buy a ticket anyway. But in this case, they're deliberately saying, no, we're not putting money into a club that we're not happy the way it's being run.
It is, and it's a really tough decision, and you can't criticise anybody that decides that they still want to go there, and you can't criticise anybody that decides that they're not willing to financially support the existing regime, because we've all got our own individual moral and ethical compass, and you should respect everybody's views. But certainly when I got to know some of the people at Blackpool who had made that decision, they said it was terrible. Saturdays were just awful, but they felt as a matter of principle that it had to be done. It's also something which is, in my view, very avoidable. The issues that we raised, the lack of transparency, the communication of last resort that the board appear to be taking is a spectacular own goal. Therefore, if the club is going to lose more money this year on the back of that, then I think the board have to take a look at themselves and take some responsibility, because we all have challenges in life, and it's how you deal with them. Being suspicious, being paranoid about engaging with people, I don't think is a positive way forwards.
Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you, and it'll get you access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, and you can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you've got a question you'd like answered on our regular Tuesday questions pod, then you can ask it at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, X, and find us on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to buy our book, which is coming out in paperback soon, you can find details on the same website, priceoffootball.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.